They thought they could erase me by cutting a bridge. That's the funny part about revenge. People always think they're the ones in control until the ground they stand on gives way beneath them. When the HOA of Willow Creek tore down the old oak bridge to force me out, they thought they were ridding themselves of the neighborhood's black sheep, the guy who didn't cut his lawn twice a week, who parked his truck facing the wrong way, who refused to pay a beautification fee for their yearly garden contest. They didn't know the bridge was the only road in. It started 3 years ago, when I bought the old Maxwell property at the far end of Willow Creek, 5 acres of forest and a crumbling farmhouse with a red tin roof. Everyone said it was haunted, cursed, or was off-grid. That's exactly why I wanted it. After 15 years as a civil engineer in the city, all I wanted was silence. Not another board meeting, not another committee telling me what color my mailbox should be. But Willow Creek wasn't your ordinary countryside community. It was a kind of place where every mailbox matched, every flower bed was identical, and every driveway was perfectly edged. They called themselves a premier HOA-managed neighborhood. I called them what they were, a gated cult with clipboards. I'd been warned by the realtor. The HOA can be involved, she said, eyes darting toward the window. They are particular about everything. I'd finished for her. She'd only smiled. I thought I could keep to myself, pay the dues, not at the meetings, and avoid confrontation. But Willow Creek had a way of crawling under your skin. It wasn't long before I was their favorite topic. First came the letters. Violation number 107, grass exceeding 2.5 inches. Violation number 223, exterior color inconsistent with community standards. Violation number 401, non-conforming vehicle parked overnight. Each one came with a fine. Each one signed by the HOA president herself, Margaret Duval. If Satan had a twin sister who wore pearls and carried a clipboard, it was her. She ruled the HOA with an iron smile. "You'll find it's easy if you just comply," she told me once, stepping onto my porch without being invited. Her perfume smelled like money and fresh paint. "I'm not part of your club," I said flatly. She laughed softly. "Oh, Mr. Gray, everyone in Willow Creek is part of the club." That's when I knew this was never going to end quietly. The bridge that connected my land to the main road was more than just an old structure. I built it myself, reinforced the beams, sealed the joints, made it strong enough for my truck in heavy rain. It stretched over a deep ravine that cut through the forest, a natural divide between my property and the rest of Willow Creek. That bridge was freedom. It meant I didn't have to drive through the neighborhood's manicured maze of streets, didn't have to wave at Margaret's security cameras or stop for their stupid speed bumps. I could come and go without being seen. But to them, that bridge was an act of rebellion. It wasn't approved by the HOA. I got the first warning about it 6 months after I moved in. Then came the threats of fines. Then the court notices. I ignored them all. Then, one foggy morning, I woke to the sound of chainsaws. I remember the smell of fresh-cut wood and the echo of metal striking metal. I ran to the ravine and froze. The HOA's hired crew, 6 men in reflective vests, were hacking apart the bridge. The beams I'd bolted, the railings I'd painted by hand, were collapsing into the chasm below. Margaret stood at the edge, wearing her spotless white blazer, sipping coffee from a silver thermos like she was watching a show. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. "Mr. Gray," she said coolly, "this bridge is on HOA property. It was built without authorization and violates our structural standards. That's my access road." She smiled. "Then you'll just have to use a community route like everyone else." I stared at the rubble. That route adds 40 minutes, through private driveways and security gates. Her eyes narrowed, amusement fading. Perhaps that's incentive to relocate. She toned, heels clicking against the pavement, leaving me standing there on an island. For the next few days, I tried reasoning. Letters, calls, even legal notices. The HOA ignored them all. They said the bridge had been dangerous and that I'd been given ample notice. The county clerk wouldn't get involved. Private road, private problem. But what Margaret didn't know was that I'd kept every letter, every fine, every picture of her crew crossing onto my land. I had proof, and more importantly, I had time. Isolation has a way of sharpening the mind. The first week, I rebuilt a footpath across the ravine. Nothing fancy, just a rope and plank system so I could reach town. The second week, I started observing. Every morning, I'd climb to the ridge and watch the neighborhood below. That's when I noticed something strange. Every vehicle that entered Willow Creek, delivery trucks, contractors, even school buses, came from the North Road, the only road, and that road crossed the same ravine, just 200 yards west of where my bridge had been. I traced the land survey maps I had from when I bought the property. Sure enough, the HOA's main road technically sat on the same parcel line that extended from my land. The county records were clear. That ravine and the land around it was part of the Maxwell property. My property. They hadn't just destroyed my bridge. They'd been driving over my land every day for years. The next board meeting was held at Margaret's house. I wasn't invited, of course, but I came anyway. Dozens of neighbors in their pastel polos and tennis skirts stared as I walked in, covered in mud from the rain. Margaret tried to smile, but I saw the flicker of unease. Mr. Gray, she began, "This is a private meeting." Private? I dropped a stack of papers on her glass table. "You mean like my land?" She frowned. "Excuse me. These are property records. Counter-verified. That ravine you love so much, the bridge you tore down, the road your precious HOA uses every single day." I leaned closer. "All mine." A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Margaret snatched the papers, eyes scanning rapidly. Her lips trembled for a second before she regained composure. "This must be a mistake." "Oh, I agree," I said. "A big one. Especially since your board approve construction projects and build residents for improvements on property you don't even own." Her face paled. "I'll be filing a claim with the county first thing Monday," I continued. "Unless, of course, you'd like to discuss a settlement." By the next morning, the entire neighborhood knew. The HOA scrambled to hire lawyers. But the law was clear. The bridge was on private land, and so was the road they relied on. They could fight me, sure, but every day that dragged on meant no trash pickup, no mail delivery, no school buses. And I hadn't even begun to act. The first thing I did was build a gate. A big one. Steel bars, electronic lock, surveillance cameras. I installed it at the exact point where the HOA's road crossed my property line. Then I posted a sign. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." By sunset, the HOA was trapped. The only entrance to their perfect little world now sealed behind my gate. The irony? They'd cut off my bridge to drive me out. Now they were the ones cut off. I spent that night on my porch, watching the lights flicker in the distance. I knew what they were doing. Calling emergency meetings, threatening lawsuits, maybe even trying to rally the residents. But they couldn't undo what they'd done. They'd built their whole kingdom on someone else's ground. And now, that kingdom was mine to play with. Still, one question lingered in my mind as I sipped my coffee and stared at the darkened ridge beyond the ravine. How far would Margaret Duval go to take back what she thought belonged to her, and how far was I willing to go to make sure she never did? Margaret Duval didn't call the police. She called the news. By the following morning, a reporter from Channel 7 was parked outside the new steel gate, filming footage of desperate residents waving HOA documents through the bars like prisoners begging for parole. "Local neighborhood trapped by rogue landowner." The caption read, "They made me sound like a lunatic, a backward recluse waging war on suburban order." I watched the broadcast from my porch, coffee in hand, and smiled. They could say whatever they wanted. I had the deed. I had the law. And most of all, I had time. Margaret, on the other hand, was running out of all three. At first, the residents tried to reason with me. Some knocked on my door, pleading. They weren't all bad people. Most were just caught in Margaret's web, too afraid to stand against her. "Please, Mr. Gray," one woman said through the gate. "My husband needs to get to work. The kids." "I'm not stopping anyone," I said calmly. "You can walk through. The road's closed, not the world." But they wanted their comfort, their cars, their deliveries, their routine. They didn't want to leave their bubble. And that was exactly how Margaret liked them. By the third day, The HOA had brought in their lawyer, a man named Crawley with slick back hair and a grin that could melt plastic. "You're trespassing, Mr. Gray," he said, standing at the gate with a folder full of papers. "You've unlawfully obstructed access to a community road." I leaned on the bars. Funny, because according to the county survey, that road sits right on my property line. He waved a paper. "We'll challenge that." "Go ahead," I said. "But until the court decides, the gate stays closed. You can walk it, crawl it, or fly it, but no vehicle crosses without my permission." Crawley's smile thinned. "You'll regret this." "Oh, I already don't," I said. Days turned into weeks. The isolation started to crack the perfect facade of Willow Creek. Trash piled up. Amazon packages stacked by the locked gate. Residents had to park outside the neighborhood and hike half a mile to their homes. Some tried to organize carpools, others held impromptu protests. But without the bridge, without their road, they were stranded. And Margaret, she doubled down. She called emergency town meetings. She circulated petitions. She even had flyers printed calling me a dangerous, unstable squatter. It was almost flattering, but I didn't retaliate right away. I waited and collected. See, the thing about HOAs is they leave paper trails, meticulous, obsessive paper trails. Every fee, every vote, every repair, every community improvement, recorded in perfect bureaucratic handwriting. I started digging. The old Maxwell house came with boxes of forgotten files, previous land surveys, tax records, even old correspondences with the county. Turns out, this land had been a thorn in the HOA side long before I moved in. They'd been trying to buy it for years, but the Maxwells never sold. When the last one died, the HOA tried to claim abandonment. They failed. So when I moved in, they saw a chance. Margaret's personal emails to the board, which I later obtained through a leaked chain from a sympathetic neighbor, revealed everything. We must make the Gray property uninhabitable. He'll sell once he realizes how isolated he is. Destroying the bridge may finally solve our problem. It wasn't just harassment. It was premeditated destruction of property. The tipping point came on a stormy Saturday night. The gate cameras picked up motion. 5 figures, hoods up, moving in the rain. I watched from my security feed as they carried crowbars and flashlights, heading straight for the locking mechanism. They didn't know I'd installed a pressure sensor that sent alerts directly to my phone. I grabbed my flashlight and shotgun, unloaded, but loud when cocked, and made my way through the mud to the gate. When I stepped out of the shadows, the beam of my light caught their faces. Margaret was one of them. "Step away," I said. Her lips trembled, but she lifted her chin. "This gate is illegal." "You're trespassing." "Again." She sneered. "You think you can hold us hostage? We'll see who wins in court." "Court," I said quietly. "You might want to call a tow truck first. Your car's about to be on the wrong side of a landslide." Her eyes flicked toward the road behind her, the slope I'd been quietly reinforcing for weeks, redirecting runoff from the ravine. A loud crack split the air. The ground shifted. Mud and debris slid down, covering the road in a thick wave. No one was hurt. I'd planned it that way, but the symbolism wasn't lost on them. The only road they had left was now buried under the weight of their own arrogance. Margaret stared at me, drenched and trembling. "You did this." "No," I said. "You did." By Monday, the HOA was in full-blown panic. With no access road and mounting pressure from residents, Margaret's empire began to crumble. Several board members resigned. Homeowners started talking about disbanding the HOA altogether. But Margaret refused to give up. She tried to file for an injunction, claiming I was endangering the community. But when the county inspector came out, he took one look at the maps and said flatly, "The road's on his property. The HOA has no legal right-of-way." Her face when he said that, I'll never forget it. The same expression as when she'd watched my bridge collapse, disbelief curdling into rage. Only this time, the destruction was hers. I could have stopped there. I could have reopened the gate, accepted their apology, maybe even sold the property for a small fortune. But revenge isn't about balance. It's about clarity. They'd taken my piece. I wanted theirs. So I went further. I compiled everything: the emails, the records, the property violations, the footage of them trying to break my gate. I sent it all anonymously to the state attorney's office and to every major news outlet in the county. 2 days later, it was front-page news. HOA president under investigation for fraud, harassment, and misuse of funds. Turns out Margaret had been funneling HOA money into her husband's contracting business, the same one that tore down my bridge. She'd even used resident fees to pay for personal repairs to her property. The residents turned on her overnight. Some of them came to my door to apologize. Others brought food or just wanted to talk. I didn't hold it against them. They were pawns in her little empire. When Margaret was finally arrested for fraud and vandalism, I didn't celebrate. I just rebuilt the bridge. But not the same way. This time, I made it wider, stronger, with concrete pilings and steel cables that could hold a truck convoy. I even added lanterns along the railings, so it glowed at night like a silver spine stretching across the dark ravine. The day it opened, a few residents came by to help me cut the ribbon. No HOA, no rules, just neighbors. Months passed. The neighborhood slowly healed. Without Margaret, the HOA dissolved. The manicured lawns grew wild. The air felt lighter. People smiled more. But I could never forget that question I'd asked myself the night I locked the gate. How far would she go, and how far would I? Now I knew the answer. She'd gone far enough to destroy herself, and I'd gone far enough to make sure she never rose again. Still, sometimes late at night, when the bridge lights flickered in the fog, I'd catch myself wondering, was it justice, or was it vengeance? Then I'd remember the sound of chainsaws that morning, the laughter in her voice as the bridge collapsed into the ravine, and I knew, some bridges are meant to burn. But others, the ones you rebuild from ashes and spite, become monuments. Mine was both. A year later, a man in a county uniform knocked on my door. Mr. Gray. Yeah. He handed me a folder. The county's redrawing boundaries. With the HOA dissolved, the residents have voted to deed maintenance of the road to you in exchange for right-of-way permission. I raised an eyebrow. So they want me to own it officially. He nodded. You get tax credits. Full control of access. I chuckled. I already have that. He smiled. Now it'll be legal, too. That night, I stood on the bridge, listening to the creek below. The moon shimmered on the water, calm and endless. I thought of Margaret, of her pearls, her perfume, her arrogance. Maybe she was sitting in some cell right now, dreaming of a perfect neighborhood. And I thought of the others, free at last from the tyranny of rules and fines. Revenge doesn't always rule. Sometimes it hums quietly beneath the sound of running water, whispering. They cut the bridge to force you out, but you were never the one who needed saving. I ran my hand along the railing, feeling the cool metal beneath my palm. The bridge didn't just lead out of Willow Creek anymore. It led through it, right through the heart of everything they tried to keep from me. And as the wind rustled the trees, carrying the scent of rain and pine, I realized something simple and satisfying. They'd built their walls high, but in the end, I built higher ground.